Hello, first tonight, the car clampers who made thousands threatening and intimidating motorists.
Today, one of them, Andrew Baker, was jailed for 2 years for clamping cars illegally. The gang operated in Milton Keynes and Birmingham. The judge described Baker as ruthless and said he'd exploited vulnerable people.
Andrew Baker held motorists to ransom by illegally impounding their vehicles. The car clamper is tonight being held in prison after his victims complained of being threatened and intimidated. Ellen Henning from Northamptonshire used a pay-and-display car park in Birmingham, but the clampers took her car away, claiming she'd parked 2 inches over a white line. She paid £365 to get it back.
They wouldn't let anybody else to pick the car up apart from myself behind this metal gate, and my daughter was crying really badly. I went and fetched the car, brought it out, and I said to the guy, well, thanks very much, you've ruined my Christmas. And he said, thanks very much, you've made mine, and put his thumb up.
Look at the sign, no, look at the sign. See how tiny that sign is.
Baker also operated in this car park in Bletchley near Milton Keynes. Excel Securities clampers were raking it in.
Can I put robbery here as well?
Gary Gwilliam did most of the clamping in Bletchley. He was fined £500 for his part in fleecing motorists. Local people in Stevenson House flats would watch them in action.
They'll hide behind cars, they'll wait for somebody to come, get out of their car and then go over once they've left. They won't give no pre-warning. You know, as you can see, the signs are nothing, you know, for anybody to see.
But the problem is that any mistake, even twice it's happened to me, delivery man came in here to deliver something for me, just 5 minutes. Before he dropped it and came back, clamped £150.
Another clamping company now operates outside Stevenson House. Universal says it has nothing to do with Andrew Baker and his friends. Baker, Gary Gwilliam and a third defendant, Mohammed Islam, who was fined £500, worked from this building in Birmingham. Trading Standards officers obtained a warrant to access Interpark UK's offices.
The law, as you know, is very weak, and we've used every law available to us, including business laws, and we've worked very hard to build cases against various companies, not just this one. And we have had a number of people in court, and the sentences are getting stiffer.
More than 100 motorists lodged complaints against Baker, alleging threats and intimidation. The judge at Birmingham Crown Court described his operation as a confidence fraud and a ruthless exploitation of vulnerable people. Sally Chidsoy, BBC Look East.
Well, Robert Adam is a solicitor and he joins us now from his office in Bury St Edmunds. When it comes to the law on clamping, what should we as drivers be on the lookout for?
Good evening. Well, I think the first thing you need to be aware of is that if you park on private land, the owner is entitled to clamp your vehicle, but they have to comply with a couple of conditions. First of all, they need to put up proper signs warning of the consequences of parking there. Secondly, if they're going to clamp your vehicle, they need to do so using a licensed clamper.
And can anyone get a licence and set up a clamping firm?
Well, I think there's a difference here that people need to recognise. There's a difference between the companies themselves, which don't need to be licensed, and the individual clampers who do need to be licensed. And one thing I would stress is that if you are clamped, do not hand over any money until you have been given a receipt by the individual that has clamped your vehicle. And that receipt should give the time and date of the clamping, the location, and most importantly will give the licence number of the clamper. If you're not given that receipt, then don't hand over your money. It's an illegal clamping, and I would telephone the police.
What about the cost of getting your car back? Are there any rules on how much can be charged?
At the moment there aren't. The general rule is that what you're charged should be reasonable. If you believe that you've been charged an exorbitant amount, then there may be recourse through the British Parking Authority. Their members do have an appeals process. Otherwise, you may have to fall back on the courts.
Rob Adam, thank you very much indeed.
Hinchingbrooke Hospital in Huntingdon could soon become the first hospital in Britain to be part of the NHS, but run by a private company. 3 companies want to take over, and today they laid out their plans. Critics say it's nothing short of privatisation. This report from Stuart Ratcliffe.
Financially, Hinchingbrooke is a sick hospital. It has debts totalling nearly £40 million, and a few years ago there was real concern that the hospital itself would be closed, or at the very least drastically scaled back. So to revive the hospital's fortunes, the Strategic Health Authority and local NHS Trust suggested a private company should be brought in to sort out Hinchingbrooke's finances. But the Royal College of Nursing believes it's the SHA and not Hinchingbrooke which is to blame for the financial black hole.
We have confidence in the current management structure of Hinchingbrooke. We would prefer Hinchingbrooke to stay in Hinchingbrooke. We would not want to have a private company taking over.
So who are the companies bidding to run Hinchingbrooke?
Our whole expertise is around helping the government to improve public service delivery. We already do an extensive amount of work in the NHS, but what is unique about our proposition is that we are looking to partner with another NHS trust.
Circle is the largest partnership of clinicians in UK. Actually, we are the largest partnership of clinicians almost anywhere in the world now, outside United States of America. We run a series of hospitals, but more importantly, for instance, as an example here, we run the largest treatment centre in all of Europe.
The third bidder didn't want to speak to Look East, but they are the Ramsay Healthcare Group, an Australian company which says it's the largest independent hospital provider in the world. All three made their pitches this afternoon, but many still remain sceptical.
Well, I mean, our big concern is the fact that these are three profit-making companies. I mean, we asked the question, how are you going to make your profit? And they weren't able to answer that. Our view is that at the end of the day, the only way they can really make profit is actually out of patient care.
More public meetings are planned over the next few weeks, and the preferred bidder should be announced in October. Stuart Radcliffe, BBC Look East, Huntingdon.
Well, earlier this afternoon I spoke to Andrew McPherson from the NHS in the East, and I asked him first if he could guarantee that patient care will not suffer.
This is an NHS service. It will continue to be an NHS service. NHS prices, NHS standards, NHS levels of governance. So services will in no way be compromised and can't be compromised under the governance structure that will continue for this hospital.
So you will guarantee that there will be no extension of waiting lists, no longer waits for operations, no reduction in the number of staff on the wards, that kind of thing?
As far as guaranteeing the future and the future structure, as you'd be well aware, there's a lot of commissioning and other strategic plans developing for the NHS throughout the United Kingdom. So it would probably be inappropriate, particularly with the new government, for me to make any statements about the future.
If you won't give me an undertaking about patient care, will you give me an undertaking about jobs? Will nurses, doctors be losing their jobs? Are you expecting lots of people in the back offices to lose their jobs?
Well, I don't think we're anywhere near that level of detail right now. I mean, our commitment here and my personal responsibility is to provide or find a suitable partner to work with the hospital, in the hospital, with the staff there and the management of the NHS to sustain the future of Hinchingbrooke. We're not anywhere near a stage of the design of those services going forward and the level of detail you're describing.
You will understand that a lot of people who live in that area will want an undertaking about that they will want to know that the number of doctors, the number of nurses will stay at the level they are now, and that's what they expect to see if the care level is going to be the same.
Well, I think I do stress that the care levels and the standards you expect from the NHS will continue. They aren't altered in any way by this process, and that's a very key aspect of this. This is NHS services, NHS standards, NHS prices. So the public can be reassured on that front. Also, the consultation of 2007 made it quite clear that existing services would continue. If there were any variance to that service, any sort of change in the future, as there might be with any hospital in the United Kingdom, there would be a full public consultation first.
And if the standards fall below the level which the people would expect of it, would you then be in a position to take the franchise away from these private companies?
Most certainly, most certainly. Default in any form whatsoever would obviously require an immediate intervention, and that will be an integral part of the contract once it's finalised.
Mr. McPherson, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.